I lost 82,000 followers 3 days after October 7th for saying that Israel has a lot of influence on social media. And then a couple months ago, I took down my whole account as Larry Ellison took over TikTok. And there was this new registration process that you needed to do, and I didn't do it. Then I did it live, and they took the whole account down, and I got off TikTok permanently and went to Substack. And in the back and forth with DMs, I said, is this the beginning of a kind of a Shia Tet offensive? And Alon said through the DMs, he said, what is Tet? So the theme tonight is, what is Tet? I have a decent knowledge of the Vietnam War. I was somewhat obsessed with it as a young guy in high school and so forth. And what it was is the clash of East and West. Like if you watch a movie like Apocalypse Now or Platoon or whatever, but Apocalypse Now, whenever they're going up the river, there's an F-15 fighter jet like stuck in the jungle and they have to go under the tail of it. And you just have the sense of like, what is this? Like a jet just stuck randomly. This is worse, what's happening in the Middle East. And if he gets to see this, Mr. Mizrahi, which I think the Arabic term means Eastern Jew or Arabic Jew, he uses this term that I think is very important and very profound. He refers to what's happening in the Middle East not as the Middle East, which is a Anglo-American worldview. He refers to it as West Asia. So tonight we're going to talk about East Asia because our parents grew up in that war. They grew up of course, in the Vietnam War. And just to remind you, the basic history of Vietnam is Indochina, French colony, an ally. Ho Chi Minh was even our ally through World War II. Ho Chi Minh and his guerrillas picked up American pilots and returned them. And then at the end of the war, they were like, we would like to be free and a national people, like all the Vietnamese people put together to stay together. Ho Chi Minh was formerly the head chef at the Ritz in Paris. Have fun with that if you like. And as the breakup of the Cold War in Korea and Germany and East Germany and everything, they didn't get a full united Vietnam. So Ho Chi Minh asked the communists for help. He was our ally to begin with. And then he wanted to unify Vietnam and then went to the communists. I recently read a quote by him that he's, quote, hated the Trotskyites. He hated the Trotskyites. So, in other words, the ideology of communism is not what came first to him. It was the nationalism of the Vietnamese people. So in West Asia, which is an interesting way to think of what's going on right now, the Anglo-American world is the people who control the oceans, control the Navy, have the aircraft carriers, and so forth. So everything to us is around what's sometimes called the world island of Eurasia, right? The big mass of China to Ukraine and everything in between. And Iran is this somewhat annoying thing that sits right down against the ocean that is the size of Alaska and has the same topography. It is an invincible place from the ocean. You cannot conquer, a place like Kuwait or Iraq, which is a desert. Jets and so forth do very well. Jets don't do very well in mountains, right? They can't see down into valleys. They can't attack everything. And this is why Americans are waking up to Trump saying we've won, but we're going to do a ceasefire. The other side isn't doing a ceasefire. We're doing a ceasefire, and it goes back and forth and back and forth. And here it is, 8 o'clock. I'm ready to do a live, and weird. My Wi-Fi doesn't support my stuff because Alex is watching. But let's do the markets for a minute before we go any further. The markets are not collapsing. There's no discontinuous pricing. There's just day in, day out unraveling of the narrative of the NASDAQ, of the technology. To include, and I think I posted it in the notes, at the beginning of the month, OpenAI raised $100 billion. They're raising money again. In less than 4 weeks, they're raising money again. They're raising money again with a 17.5% premium over all the other money that they're desperate. OpenAI is absolutely desperate for money. The whole Trump vision of Stargate, AGI, touching the face of God with technology, server farms as big as the bottom half of Manhattan, that whole Trump world is done. It's over. And if you look at the graph of the NASDAQ, I would encourage you to just look at it from year to date. It's lower lows and lower highs over and over and over again. And I think today we close just this far off the bottom. If you go into a Friday close and it closes at the low, it's very, very negative. I went out to buy groceries and shit at like 1:00 and listen to CNBC and Bloomberg. Nobody even has anything to say. Nobody even has this could, they don't even, it's over. It's like 1982 and you're discussing disco. It just doesn't work. Nobody believes in any of it anymore. They don't believe in AGI. They don't believe in NVIDIA. They don't believe in Palantir. They don't believe in the NASDAQ. They don't believe in the superiority of our technology. And the trading, for the first time, the trading is... I don't need to come on here and say, the NASDAQ could go down 80%. I'm telling you, the NASDAQ just doesn't have an investment thesis at all. So 1968, look at this. 1968, started off with LBJ and the Beatles were popular, and I was going to play a song, but for some reason the Wi-Fi doesn't want to cooperate whenever I'm going live. I think it's because I'm on the list. And in the middle of the year, hold on, let's just go through the dates. So the Tet Offensive was the Lunar New Year, which frequently led to, the famous thing in World War I where the Germans, the English walked out no man's land and they sang Silent Night together. So they would do a silent night every year for the Tet holiday. And even it's described as like people from up north who are the communists would come back down to the south and visit their families. And the South Vietnamese army would also go home. And sometimes they were in the same villages in the same cities and knew that the other guy, the bad guy, was across the street. But everybody let everybody alone for the holiday. Well, this time, the communists had prepared for it en masse and had massive infiltration of the towns and cities, armaments, Kalashnikovs, RPGs, explosives, and upwards of 80,000 troops were primed and ready to go off at 3:00 in the morning, basically Christmas Eve, if you know what I mean. Like Washington crossing the Delaware on Christmas Eve. completely caught everybody off guard. And it wasn't even like two armies clashing into each other. So you have these big bases and like the big Marine base or something. Okay, here come the bad guys. They're ready for that. This was more like the police stations in Saigon and Hue, spelled Hue. Looks like Hugh, but it's pronounced Hue. Like the first battles were sometimes against police stations, and it ended up being American MPs fighting guerrillas in the middle of the cities. And this caught everybody off guard. And it was shown on television because, American television people are cruising around the big cities, interviewing people, and then all of a sudden the fighting starts up. So you see the famous thing where the guy gets shot in the head. It's like the most iconic image of the late 20th century. A couple weeks into it is when the famous My Lai massacre happens. They go into this village and expect to see all these Viet Cong there, and there's nobody there, and they just murder a bunch of people and drop. It's real bad, and it's a lot what the Israelis are doing to the people of Gaza and the people of Lebanon right now. It's very, very similar. My point, my punchline for you tonight is you can take the battle of the Tet Offensive and just add a couple zeros to it. So I think in the city of Hue, which was on the Perfume River, it's like the ancient 300 BC capital of Vietnam. All the like classic to us, like the classic Asian architecture and so forth. 5,000 civilians were killed. Like all the teachers, lawyers, doctors, everybody. The communists just came in, killed all the professional class. Right? Communists are really good at that. Israelis are good at that too. Whenever they invaded Lebanon in the early 80s, the first thing they did was they went and put all the doctors into jail so that everybody knew that they were wounded. All the wounded people knew that they were going to die. I know this is tough, but you're going to have to just suck it up. And you can go watch MSNBC and hear about that fucking woman's mother who was like taken out of her garage. They still play that on MSNBC all the time. I'm sitting at lunch, like flicking the channels, and it comes back. What's this woman's name? Her mother was kidnapped, or in the middle of this war, we're hearing about this old woman who was kidnapped from her house. That's how much propaganda we have. So the battle lasted about a month. It was repulsed, except things happened like the embassy in Saigon, the U.S. embassy was attacked with a suicide truck. They blew up the gate. Some guerrillas got in. There was some shooting. It was put down within 36 hours or 48 hours or whatever. But the impact on the American people through television, through Walter Cronkite, through the whole thing, a little over a month later, LBJ announced that he would not seek re-election. Okay, so from January 30th to mid-March, the President of the United States effectively says, I'm done. Okay. 2 months later in June, Bobby Kennedy is running for president, and it's clearly going to be the Democratic nominee and clearly going to win, right? He's the ghost of his brother and so forth. He's assassinated by his guard, shot in the back. Bobby, his son, has articulated this, that he was not shot by Sirhan Sirhan. And Bobby Kennedy Jr. actually visited Sirhan Sirhan in jail. Now, like a lot of these weird things that happen, assassinations like Jack Ruby and so forth, no one's ever interviewed Sirhan Sirhan. There's never, he's never been on 60 Minutes. I mean, fucking, what's his name? Charles Manson's been on like 60 Minutes like 3 times or something. It's obvious that he's some sort of like Illuminati CIA thing, right? No one's ever talked to Sirhan Sirhan. So all your MK Ultra stuff, you can just run wild with it. But So January, Tet Offensive. March, LBJ's out. June, Bobby Kennedy Jr.'s dead. And in September, maybe if I turn this off and turn it back on. In 68, I think it's 68 that was known as the Summer of Love. That's some sort of weird Time Life Books Illuminati thing, because the zeitgeist, the psychology of the American people completely changed from the beginning of the year to the end. And what I was going to try to play for you, I mean, this is really weird. Like, just suddenly I don't have Wi-Fi. Weird. um, the Beatles and the Sergeant Pepper's and the Magical Mystery Tour and all that, like, psychedelic psychobabble bullshit is what started 1968. It went out with Led Zeppelin. It went out with, like, Dazed and Confused. Like, the psychology of America completely changed and it's the Tet Offensive that did it. So, what I want to do is just walk you through for a minute. A lot of Americans don't really know the reality of what the Middle East, or as Alon calls it, West Asia, looks like. It's dominated by Sunni oil money aligned with American and Israeli interests. And of course, the capital of that is Saudi Arabia. But in popular culture, we even know that there's this thing called Dubai that's sort of like a Las Vegas kind of thing. And the Iranians are just like, that's done. That's over. They hit the Citigroup building. They hit the radar towers. They haven't really completely destroyed the infrastructure of things like the desalination plants. Once the desalination plants are hit, you can't live there. You have to be on a camel to live there. Like, I'm not making this up. There's no water there. There's no agriculture. There's nothing there. It's this isn't like the Tet Offensive and like the Marines are gonna chase the bad guys around the city away for a couple of weeks and fuck around and find out. We're talking about a big chunk of the world that's going to become uninhabitable. So Mr. Manis was nice enough to give us a little executive. The Middle East is currently witnessing an unprecedented level of military engagement involving Iran, the United States, Israel, and a vast network of Shia militias comprising the, quote, axis of resistance. Manpower. The group I'll put this up for subscribers. The group maintains a substantial combat force of 40 to 50,000 active duty active duty fighters, the elite Radwan unit tasked with offensive ground operations. This is the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Hezbollah's rocket missile inventory of 150,000. The arsenal is estimated at 250,000, predominantly short and medium range rockets. The group, let me stop and say, one of the things in a couple different videos I saw about the Tet Offensive, I guess this was the first time that the RPG, which is this big, like, looks like a big baseball bat that they put over their shoulder and launch this little rugby ball thing. And it's not, you don't go boom and it blasts out like a cannon. It's rocket propelled. So you shoot the thing and the propulsion comes out the back of this. And during the Tet Offensive, I guess these things were just everywhere, and American troops weren't really used to them, and they could punch through 13 inches of steel. They're made to blow up tanks, but the Viet Cong and the guerrillas in the North Vietnamese army used them as anti-personnel rockets, essentially. And I guess Americans didn't really expect all these things to be all over the place. They just anticipated that they would be used against tanks, but they were now like in the middle of Saigon. And if you've seen movies about the war on terror, to this day, they still use them in Afghanistan. What I'm getting at is there's 1 million people ready to go in the Middle East, in what Elon calls West Asia, like this. 1 million, not 80,000, 1 million. Iraq, the Popular Mobilization Forces. And I think the head of the Iraq defense, like the Secretary of Defense of Iraq, has called up these the militia this week. He called them up. The PMF comprises 70 brigades of approximately 230,000 personnel and an annual state-funded budget of $3.5 billion. The most potent pro-Iran factions include Khatib Hezbollah and Asr Allah and the Badr organization. Foreign fighters. Following the fall of the Assad regime in Syria, thousands of Afghan, Pakistani, and Shia fighters fled to Iraq. These battle-hardened veterans are currently warehoused at PMF bases in Anbar and Diyala provinces, integrated into the border Iraqi militia infrastructure. Capabilities. The Iraqi militias have moved beyond simple rocket attacks like I just described, utilizing indigenous drone and missile production facilities. Recently, they have developed advanced fiber optic first-person view drones, which are highly precise and immune to electronic jamming, posing a severe threat to U.S. installations. Yemen, Ansar Allah, the Houthis, not the Blowfish, the other Houthis. The Houthis operate 4 distinct domestic arms manufacturing lines producing landmines, cruise missiles, ballistic missiles, and aerial drones. More than 80% of the intercepted maritime smuggling shipments destined for Yemen now consist of manufacturing components rather than finished weapons, indicating a highly robust domestic industrial base. The group possesses medium-range ballistic missiles such as the Tufan Shahab 3 variant with a range up to 1,900 kilometers. I think that's 120 miles or 1,200 miles, I think. Thousands of armed drones. Despite sustained U.S. airstrikes during Operation Poseidon Archer, the Houthis maintain the ability to choke the global shipping and strike regional targets. The other thing, this Arabian Peninsula comes down, the Persian Gulf is over here, the Straits of Hormuz are here, and then the other one's here in the Red Sea, and the Houthis are right down here. So the Shia can turn off both of these things if they want to. Oil goes to, I think oil, even in the United States, would go to $250 a barrel. That's not really what I'm laying out here tonight. I'm not laying out like the thing that Wall Street is talking about. I'm not laying out the thing that like the White House is talking about. I'm laying out something that nobody's prepared for. Okay? If you watch the movie Patton, when he's in the Elysian fields of, it's in the movie, he says, the Germans haven't had a winter campaign since, what's his name? King of Prussia. The King of Prussia in Philadelphia is named after him. Whatever the Great, it's not Peter the Great, it's the other one. And he just anticipates that the Germans are going to do this. They're going to have this massive attack in the middle of the winter, which became the Battle of the Bulge. And if you watch the movie, they're all sitting around going, what do we do about the Battle of the Bulge? And he goes, I can have 2 divisions moved into France in 48 hours. He's completely prepared for it. It's weird. It's like it's like one of those things. And that's why he's, going to be famous forever. So here's the basic breakdown of Hezbollah: 40 to 50,000 active, 30 to 50,000 reserve. So Hezbollah is 100,000. Iraqi PMF, 100,000. stretched up to 230,000. Fatih Zain Abiwan up to 14,000. I have a hunch that that's from either Syria or Afghanistan. Ansar Allah, the Houthis, hundreds of thousands. It's easily 1 million people. So just the basic numbers, if you look into the American military, we have about 100,000 Marines, we have about 100,000 paratroopers. I think we have 100,000 82nd and 100,000 101, like these big brigades of infantry that we can move. Now, we still have lots of Air Force and lots of planes and whatever and tactical nuclear weapons. But what I'm showing to you is the Tet Offensive was this thing with like red ants, like, like surround a baby pig and then they sting it all at the same time. The pig dies, right? The Tet Offensive was this, it wasn't just it wasn't 80,000 people just coming from the north, like sweeping to the south. That's easy for Americans to take out, right? We have all the bombs and the machine guns and the arc light and the Vulcan cannon and shit. Like, we actually want them to do that, right? This is, they're everywhere, and all of a sudden, 3 o'clock in the morning, they attack everywhere. Well, this is the whole Middle East, people, with 1 million. And we have warfighter. We have Secretary of War, the warfighter. Like, we have assholes running our military, assholes running our stuff. Speaking of assholes, LBJ, there's a movie about LBJ, and he every morning he used to like get up and take a shit and like be surrounded while he was shitting. Like the journalist would be around him and he answers questions while he's, doing it out. LBJ was a fucking asshole. Okay. One journalist asked him, like, why are we in Vietnam? And he turned around. He had a big cock, a big swinging dick on. This is a true story. I'm not making this up. He just turned around and unzipped his pants, just pulled his cock out and just hung it out there. Like, if I did that, nobody would see it, but just hung it out there and decided, this is why we're in Vietnam. We're in a worse situation than LBJ hanging his cock out. We're with clowns and real estate shysters from New York who think we're going to bomb. Think about this, people. Think about this. We all know The Godfather. Godfather 2, Michael's negotiating with this Jewish mobster named Hyman Roth, right? And Roth tries to kill him. And Michael knows that it was Roth. And they're negotiating a deal at the same time. Is this not exactly what we're doing to Iran? We attempt to assassinate you, and then we'll make a deal. America is run by Roth. Don't get worked up about it. Don't get all like, anti-Semitism. No, it's just gangsterism. And it just happens to be Jewish. The people running the show right now are Jewish gangsters. You could literally, as a euphemism, just call them Roth. Wexner is Roth. He's just a Chicago mobster. Don't get worked up about it. It's that simple. The other side knows that. Putin knows that. Z knows that. They know Trump. There's an FBI document on the internet that says that Trump is compromised by Israel. And his handler is Jared Kushner. And Chabad is sort of the religious cover for this red Roth mafia. The other side knows that. The other side knows that they're really not up against the American people, which is something you have to stop for a minute and think about. Oh, by the way, the Republican Congresswoman first woman to graduate from the Citadel, was interviewed this week. And they said, are you going to vote for the package that's going? She said, no, I'm not voting for anything that puts boots on the ground in the Middle East. And they said, aren't you worried about Hezbollah over there? And she said, no, because they're here. I mean, I could do another Friday thing and say, what would that look like? Like, how many sleeper cells are there in the United States? Hezbollah's they're just Lebanese people. They're nice people. They look sort of European, just a little bit darker. How hard is that? I met somebody from that world one time, and he just rattled off all these different like terrorist groups. And he said, what about the Iranians in Mexico? And I said, what? He said, oh yeah. Where do you think the cartels get all their weapons? The key strategic elements of the Tet Offensive: 1. Simultaneity, attacking everywhere at once to paralyze the adversary's command, control, and response capabilities. 2. Psychological shock, shattering the illusion of security and demonstrating that the adversary is nowhere near defeat, despite prior military setbacks. 3. Symbolic targeting, striking highly visible political and diplomatic targets, embassies, capitals, to maximize media impact and domestic political fallout in the United States. Pre-positioning infiltration, moving fighters and weapons into urban centers covertly under the guise of civilian movement. Strategic victory via tactical defeat. The Viet Cong were militarily decimated during Tet. That's right, it's probably 10-1. But the offensive achieved its ultimate goal, destroying American political will and forcing a strategic de-escalation. People, we are very, very... Senator Kennedy from Lebanon... I'm sorry, I don't know where that came from. Senator Kennedy from New Orleans, Louisiana. He's like, it's time to bring the guys home. Everybody's worn out. The Iranians know this. This is why they didn't just go in and just bomb one of the big bases and just murder 9,000 American troops in Bahrain or Iraq, because what would that do? That would enrage us like Pearl Harbor, right? And then and then they have a problem. They're not going to do it. Let me tell you something. I'm going to tell you what the fuck they're going to do. When we left Vietnam, right, the iconic pictures of like helicopters being pushed off the aircraft carrier and people lined up at the embassy trying to grab onto the helicopters, it's flying away and all that stuff, right? What the Iranians are going to do, and what Ilan Mizrahi is trying to argue, is they want to absolutely humiliate the Americans. They want to make a deal that the American Marines and Army and Air Force people in Bahrain are going to literally have to be bussed to the shore, and I don't know, a Russian frigate or something is going to take them out of the Gulf, or they're going to have to walk through the desert to Turkey or something like that. They're going to say, all right, you can fly your C-130s in one after another, and one fucking crooked move, we're going to hit you with a missile. They're going to humiliate the United States. And Trump and his coterie of clowns, they can't even see the potential outcome of this is to permanently ruin American gravitas in the world, which might be the plan. But for tonight, we're just going to do a Tet Offensive. Modeling a Shia Tet Offensive in the Middle East, applying the Tet Offensive framework to the current disposition of the axis of resistance reveals a highly dangerous scenario. Iran and its proxies, currently under immense pressure from the ongoing U.S.-Israeli air campaign, could opt to launch a sudden, simultaneous, theater-wide offensive designed not to win a conventional military victory, but to inflict unacceptable psychological, economic, and political costs. Manus is just killing it here. I haven't read this before, by the way. I'm just zipping through it. The simultaneous strike strike, H hour. The Levant, Hezbollah launches a massive saturation barrage with its remaining 25,000 rockets, combined with hundreds of suicide drones to overwhelm Israel's Iron Dome and David Sling. Simultaneously, Radwan units attempt ground incursions in northern Israel, aiming to capture a settlement or military outpost for symbolic media value. Iraq and Jordan, PMF factions and allied militias launched simultaneous swarm attacks using jam-proof fiber optic drones against the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad, El Assad Air Base, U.S. installations in Erbil and Jordan. Ground forces lay siege to the Green Zone in Iraq, attempting to breach the perimeter in a direct parallel to the 1968 Saigon embassy attack. There you go, man. You're getting the joke now. The Gulf and the Red Sea, the Houthis, not the blowfish, the other ones, simultaneously launched volleys of ballistic missiles and drones at critical oil infrastructure in Saudi Arabia and the UAE, while heavily mining the Bab el-Mandeb Strait to halt global shipping. In Bahrain, Saudiya al-Mukhtar sleeper cells instigate violent urban riots and attempt sabotage against the Fifth Fleet headquarters. Straits of Hormuz, the IRGC Navy, initiates swarm boat attacks on commercial vessels and U.S. naval assets, attempting to temporarily close the strait and spike global oil prices to catastrophic levels. That's pretty much... Instead of the objective to crush, it's a spectacle of vulnerability. The U.S. cannot protect its allies, its forces, or the global economy. The economic shock, the unwinnable war narrative from the Vietnam War, militia attrition and strategic gain. Again, I'll put this up for paid people and for those of you who like to dig into these things. There's references, Foreign Policy Initiative, ALMA Research and Education, the Century Foundation, Washington Institute for Near East Policy, Institute for the Study of War, Office of the Historian, and American Enterprise Institute. Half of those are all neocon, pro-Israeli funded things, but that's okay. The Shia militias of the Axis of Resistance are no longer disparate bands of insurgents. They are a highly integrated, technologically capable transnational army. While they have suffered significant tactical defeats, the underlying infrastructure remains intact. Policymakers must recognize that these forces possess both the capability and the strategic doctrine to execute a synchronized theater-wide offensive. Preventing such an event requires moving beyond reactive airstrikes and focusing on permanently severing the logistical, financial, technological supply chains that bind this neural network together. Now, think about this. Think about Dubai. And they have that big hotel, the Taj something, or, and, some Shia militia group, I can't remember the names, comes on one Friday morning and says, the Shia militia have now instituted the new Islamic Republic of the UAE has now been overwhelmed by the Shia militia, returning both Muslim and infidels back into the Ummah, the kind of a caliphate. What would the stock market in the United States do? It would be closed. They would stop trading. They would stop trading again, and then they would close the stock market for the day. It would be a lot like 9/11, only sort of like upside down. And I'm telling you, this is much more likely. I haven't heard anybody on, CNBC, Zero Hedge, anybody talk about this. I think I'm sort of making this video for Alon to comment on this. And this is what there's not even any troops being used yet, people. There's not even any contact other than some IDF guys going north into Lebanon and basically getting, I think there's 30 or 40 tanks blown up. Tanks are just targets. They're just big, dumb, loud, slow, they're like bulldozers. They're just, and a guy runs out, just like the Tet Offensive. But now the thing on his shoulder is way more effective. It's wire guy. I don't even know. I'm just making this up. But it's not even like, shoot and hope. It's like wire guided, and he can hold the bead on the thing, and the fucking tank is done. And then he disappears. There's a video of it, and the Israelis talking to his commander, and he says, "We're fighting ghosts. We don't even know who's shooting at us." They don't even make a loud noise. It's not even like a cannon or something, right? Because you just go, pew, and it's a rocket. So it just makes this weird swooshy sound, and it comes and lights up. I think an Israeli tank's like 3 or 4 million, and the thing being shot at them is, I don't know, $3,000. So that's that. Let's see if Alex Karp will let me put some music on. The other part of this I'm trying to get at isn't just the horror of the military and explosions and tanks and troops and so forth. I'm trying to get you to understand the psychological effect. And I'm trying to get you to understand that America is really, 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 really close to where we were in early 1968. And, strategic genius of the people who organized the Tet Offensive, they knew all we needed to do was a big psychological attack. We don't even have to win. We don't have to take the embassy. We don't have to take the Marines out of Quai Son. We just have to show up. Hey, we have a Geico commercial. Just give me a couple more minutes. I want to talk about this. I'm going to talk about popular culture a little bit. And I want to talk about music. And a lot of us know, because we love this. We love this music so much. My girlfriend from Yale one time said something that I was really caught off guard. She said, the culture of the 60s and the music and Woodstock and the what was the jazz festival that Jimi Hendrix, came out of. She said that's all just like the Athenian tragedies and comedies were all during the Peloponnesian Wars. And I was like, I think that's why my dad's paying so much money for me to come here, so I get to hear shit like that. In other words, the tension, all the tension of the Vietnam War is like, you can hear it in the culture, in the music, in the not just the assassinations, which are a big part of it. I heard somebody recently say that the Beatles came like 6 or 8 months after JFK was assassinated. And the fact that this guy was young, who's good looking, my parents talk about JFK like he's like some sort of like an egregore, like some sort of like law, like King Arthur or something. Like because they were just recently married. They were on campus, and like, everybody has that story, like, where were you when JFK died? The only guy that doesn't know that is George Herbert Walker Bush, but let's all calm down. But they talk about it like a massive, massive psychological trauma. And the Beatles came 6 or 8 months later. And now we had this whole new thing to like capture our attention and give us like hope, like, okay, now we're going to like, live large and let our hair down, maybe smoke a joint once in a while, or, have some premarital sex or other, really crazy stuff. But even that sort of ran its course into, sorry, I have that one teed up for you. Come on now. So this song that you all know and love came out from Bob Dylan like 6 months before 1968. And then, of course, was made famous by the paratrooper from Seattle, also known as. Wouldn't it be great if I had a Mr. Snerdley? I could just like have this all teed up and wouldn't have to. Y'all know this song. So this comes out like right in the middle of all this. Like, I don't know if it hit the. It's pre-Tet Offensive. I don't know when this one came out, but it's like right in there, right? And it's this weirdness of like, what the fuck is going on? So by the end of the year, all this new music is like, oh yeah, that other shit, that Lucy and this, that like silly Beatles, like Sgt. Pepper stuff, that hippie shit is over. It's dark. It's okay. But the one I wanted to play for you was this. This is like what the kind of shit that people were listening to right before the Tet Offensive. Come on, people. This is like the Beatles kind of music right before Tet. And Brian Epstein had died in November of 1967. This was the Beatles. To stick needles in your eyes. Right, nobody's listening to that shit after the Tet Offensive. So here's what comes just Here's just a couple of months later, September of 1968. This thing hits the United States. You all know what this is, right? It actually sounds like the Tet Offensive. So if I remember right, they came to America right at the holidays going into 1969. They played like jazz clubs and like cafes. And when they left, like a couple of months later, they played Shea Stadium like the Beatles. My point to you in all this is this. Trump came in with like the magical mystery tour, right? Stargate, $22 trillion. We're going to be winning. We're going to get sick of winning. Like we're just going to win and win. And it's almost like this phantasmagoria, like a fever dream LSD trip of MAGA and Erica Kirk popping out of the fucking stage and this madness, right? We're fighters. And like this crazy Stephen Miller, we can do whatever we want, and we're just going to send ICE agents and shoot people in the fucking face and all this. And I'm telling you, people, this isn't even just about like, oh shit, I think my dad got filled up the diesel pickup truck and it was $6 a gallon. I'm not talking about $6 a gallon, people. I'm talking about $16 a gallon. I'm talking about COVID lockdowns. I'm talking about Substack will just be taken down. Like a kind of change. It sounds like I'm just trying to be pessimistic and I'm not. What I'm trying to say is like the psychology can change so dramatically, so fast. You can already see it in the stock market. Okay. You can see that there just simply isn't a bid to keep the Magnificent Seven stocks alive. There's just nobody really wants them. There's just some traders going in, thinking that they're oversold, but they're lower lows and lower highs, day after day, week after week, day after day, week after week. OpenAI is trying to raise more money. It's not there. Where did all the money come for all the AI? The Gulf states. They're all on fire now. Their airports aren't working. People aren't going to the hotels. People aren't operating through their financial system. So Trump's answer to this is, well, we're making a deal. They want to make a deal. We've talked about it. Unbelievable. We have a deal. We've been talking to some people in Pakistan, and everybody just knows he's a fucking lion shyster kid fucker. Like, nobody really trusts this guy, right? Even the people that like him. If they light up the Middle East with several 100,000 troops that we can't do anything about, people, you don't even know what that looks like financially. Look at the 30-year bond. Clearly, I mean, the essays right there and the Moran essays right there, they're just going to do yield curve control. I called the guy on TikTok. What's his handle? Older guy. Process for Growth Consulting. And I said, do you really think they're going to do like yield control? He says, it's in the paper. They said they're going to do it. Now, you don't know what that means, but what they're getting at is, if the 30-year bond starts to go down in value, they'll buy it to hold it back up. So it closed at 4.982. That's really close to 5, isn't it? Really close to 5. They don't want it to go over 5. Because if the 30-year goes over 5, the 10 will go over 5, and then mortgages will go to 7 and 8%, and then nobody knows how anything works anymore. The cash flow of the whole system just starts to fall apart. So how do they do that? How do they do yield control? Ultimately, if it gets bad enough, they have to print money. They'd have to print money into $150 oil. So I looked it up because I know you're interested. The Dow Jones Industrial Average, the day of the Tet Offensive, was 880. It had crossed 1,000 for the first time in 1966. It wouldn't hit 1,000 again. Are you saying like because of the Tet Offensive? Yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. It wouldn't hit 1,000 again until 1982. For 15 years, the stock market went nowhere because of inflation, whether you want to call it inflation, currency devaluation, going off the gold standard, loss of confidence in American finance. It's all the same thing, people, right? And then Nixon does the 2-finger wave because they stole some files at the Watergate Hotel. Who gives a shit, right? The whole thing for 15 years, it was such a clusterfuck for 15 years. The stock market couldn't even go up with inflation, meaning like J.C. Penney's was showing earnings growth, but everybody just knew it was inflation, so nobody would buy the stock. In this country, they've done a good enough job. All the white people on TV and Jim Cramer and everybody, they're like, hey, everything's growing. We have AGI. We're going to touch the face of God. We're going to have Stargate. We're going to mine asteroids. They've just kept the fairy tale, the Wizard of Oz bullshit going. But it's not going to. And I'm going to tell you right now, if you see troops swarm somewhere, northern Israel, that's where Armageddon is, by the way. It's the valley of, there's a Hebrew word for it that they derived Armageddon from. It could be the Pars Field. It could be the island of Karg. It could be a landing somewhere where I think it was Churchill landed troops, Gallipoli, something like that. It was an absolute disaster. Like 100,000 troops landed, or 50,000, and like half of them were slaughtered or something. Like, just, it's amazing you even know the name Churchill, because the thing was such a disaster, and it was completely his alcoholic brain that put it together. If we were to experience one of these things, we wouldn't have financial markets anymore, right? This is called The Nationalist, by the way, on Friday nights. So I wanted to share with you a couple pieces, if you're still with me. When I talk about this idea that psychology could change, not just like right now, people are skeptical, they're sick of the wars, boots on the ground, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So here's recent activity at CPAC, the Conservative Political Action Committee.
How many of you would like to see impeachment hearings? No, that was the wrong answer. I'm sorry to do it. How many of you would like to see impeachment hearings? No.
That's at CPAC.
Can someone bring some coffee out for the...
That's at CPAC. This is the Conservative Political Action Committee. They said, you want impeachment hearings for Trump? And not, you can hear, it's not everybody, but it's probably 20, 30% of the people in the room were like, fuck yeah, let's send that son of a bitch to jail. Here's the recent Sean Ryan show. Now, with Joe Kent. Now, for 5 years on here, I've been trying to explain to you that ISIS, Al-Qaeda, al-Nusra, all of those things are related to Western intelligence. And I had to be very careful, because if you'd say that, if you'd even like flirt with that on TikTok, your account goes right down. You'd lose your live. It would take the thing down. No, you can't say that. ISIS never attacks Israel. Al-Qaeda never attacks Israel. In the Israeli papers, the Secretary of Defense one time, we have to make sure that ISIS is not wiped out in Syria. Now, American troops have been fighting these people. I'm 55 years old. For 25 years, we've been fighting the allies of Israel. The guy who grew up in this house led the 10th Mountain Division to go find Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. Now, edgy influencer, you know. Well, this is the guy that just resigned as the Assistant Secretary of the Department Domestic, whatever, Counterterrorism. This is Joe Kent on the Sean Ryan show. Where do you hear this? I guess in the last 48 hours.
Going right into Israel's backyard. So the Israelis at the end of the Iraq war were like, no, this is not going to work at all. We have to break this up. We have to go to war in Syria. We have to take down Assad. Arab Spring happened. There was some energy from the people. I think it was somewhat organic. But then in short order, we came in and we said, we're going to work with the Israelis, but we're also going to have to work heavily with the Sunni population on the ground in Syria to create an uprising. And that's where ISIS came from. We worked directly with Al-Qaeda. Hillary Clinton's emails confirm this. The operations that we were doing to support the so-called Free Syrian Army, and there were some moderates there, but the most effective guys initially were Al-Qaeda and then eventually ISIS. Now, obviously, ISIS got out of control, and they started plotting attacks in Europe. They started plotting attacks in America. They took over large swaths of Iraq. So we then had to go back and put out, once again, the brush fire that we had started and go after ISIS. That's where I lost my late wife. But Israel was the driving factor in that. We took down Saddam.
Israel killed his wife.
We then had to go in and take out Assad, who was a strong man against Israel as well. And now this is the third phase. We're going now into Iran to take out that strong government for Israel.
Who do we put in charge of Syria?
Oh, we handed that whole, well, again, we screwed the whole thing up so much
We
that
handed it to a leader of fucking Al Qaeda.
yep, he was in ISIS initially. He was in Al Qaeda initially in Iraq, fighting against us. We had him in jail, joined ISIS, broke off from ISIS, hand selected by bin Laden's right hand man, Ayman Zawahiri, to lead Nusra. And then they rebranded. And this is the number one way to fool Americans as a jihadist is just put on a suit and get a good PR company, and then apparently we'll just believe whatever you say.
There's videos of this guy holding people's heads that he cut off.
Yeah, he's the thug.
He's shaking.
He's a brutal
President
terrorist.
Trump's hand.
Yeah, horrible advice. Yep. And so
What the fuck are we doing?
exactly,
What are we doing?
exactly. President Trump at the beginning, again, this is where Trump.
So that's Sean Ryan, a Navy SEAL, a popular podcaster. Now, I've known all this for 20 years, and it's why I've been doing what I'm doing. And, you know, it's a weird thing. Like, you can't go to like a cocktail party. You can't just bust that out 10 years ago. Oh, by the way, Israel runs ISIS. You can't do that. You won't have any friends. You'll end up in front of your parents' farmhouse door doing Substack videos. That was funny, sort of. Listen to this. My complex production system is that I text things to myself. I Steely Dan it. I send it off in a letter to myself so that I remember to play it. But this was a interesting Tet Offensive thing. Let's see if I can pop it back up. What it was is a gentleman, very articulate, went into military intelligence, Army intelligence, and was stationed in the Mekong Delta. That's at the very bottom of Vietnam, and it's a delta like Louisiana, right? This massive Mekong River from like Apocalypse Now. You know, it comes out of the Himalayan mountains. It's a massive, big brown thing, right? And it comes out and made this huge, swampy. And the Viet Cong were the U.S. military referred to them as Mr. Charles, not Charlie, Mr. Charles, because they were so savage. They were so brilliant at their tactics and so forth. Anyways, he was stationed down there, and the Tet Offensive happened, and just like the rest of the country, it just lit up all of a sudden. And he said, we woke up one day and like opened the door, and there's tracer rounds going in both directions. We had no idea like what the fuck was going on, and like we didn't have any weapons. We were intelligence people. But I guess 2 days later they put their head down. 2 days later they were on their way to the airfield, and because it was so savage they had to come in with napalm. And he said, as we're going to the air base, like I guess in a Jeep or whatever, like they're looking and there's all these charred bodies, like charcoal bodies from being hit with napalm. He said you didn't know if they were soldiers or Viet Cong or someone's dad or whatever. But then he went on to say, imagine the psychological impact of the local people to see that, right? Imagine your grandfather didn't make it home one night and you walk out 100 and 200 yards away and there's a body that looks like the sausage you left on the barbecue grill overnight and forgot to turn it off. So we are this close to the whole fucking thing blowing apart. The stock market, Joe Kent, CPAC, Trump, Rubio, Epstein, Wexner, the Rothschilds, like it's slowly coming out. Like really the whole war on terror is just a reorganization of the pipelines. You know, you got to break some, you want to make scrambled eggs, you got to break some eggs. We got to move the energy thing around. These 40,000 more Americans have taken their life during the war on terror than died in the Vietnam War. You want to do that again? More American service personnel have taken their own life back home than are on that fucking wall in Washington, D.C. Thank you for watching The Nationalist. We have an exciting weekend planned for you here at Bruno Podcast. I think Saturday is not going to be all business. That sounds like Bloomberg. Nobody wants to hear that. I think it's going to be Leaves of Grass. Then on Sunday, we're going to do something called American Gothic. A lot of people don't know that Led Zeppelin started. They were maybe going to be like a hippie band. Robert Plant was in a band called Band of Joy. And they came from the Yardbirds. And like as they were getting together, they like played together. And they went to see Jeff Beck and Rod Stewart, who would play in this wild, like just plug your Marshall amplifier in and just turn it up as loud as possible. And Rod Stewart could wail like Robert did. So they like watched that and they're like, oh, that's what we're going to sound like. My point is like they were going to be another hippie band, right? And like everything in 1968 changed. Protesting is bullshit. Imagine nobody had ever heard anything like there was no heavy metal. I mean, other than Janis Joplin, and they'd turn the amplifiers up real loud. Like nobody heard any sort of like dark music like that before that album hit. September 68, they came to town on the holidays and it's over. Like, right? Everything changed. Even in like their if you watch like the live stuff, they go into this thing in the middle of the song and they go, and they almost spoof themselves. They almost like spoof the whole thing. Like, if you're going to San Francisco, be sure to wear some flowers in your hair. But it's real dark and like decadent and everything. And it's like, nope, that's over. So we'll do Leaves of Grass tomorrow. I have some things to talk about. I have some good things to talk about. Sunday, we're going to go like Led Zeppelin. Like real bad. I keep saying this, like this will be my final, dark theology, dark enlightenment piece. And they just keep getting worse. Somebody just went by here and said, we need to do, let me take a look at what people are saying. We need to do like more protests and like people can't you see that no kings thing is all fake? Like it's on MSNBC and everybody's very concerned, and they're going to go to the No Kings protests and bullshit. Like, come on. Like, smoke a joint and listen to Led Zeppelin or something. Like, you got to like go to the next layer in the onion, people. We have been infiltrated. Not just Trump and like some 14-year-old girls like the scene and fucking Raging Bull in the bar or something. That's not what this is. This is a unified uh, Gestapo that permeates our entire federal government. As Catherine Austin Fitts says, the problem with our federal government is we don't have one. We don't have an FBI. If you go into the Epstein thing in Florida, the prosecutor, this is more like Ozark. This is more like Breaking Bad. It's funny. That's my point to you. Like when you listen to all this like popular culture, you're sort of hearing what everybody's thinking, right? Nobody's doing any more goddamn Sergeant Pepper stuff after the Tet Offensive, right? We're not going to have like protests, and we have a mafia checka, like Gestapo, like SS in charge of America. Look what happens with the Congress right now. I don't know who writes the budget, but if they don't get what they want, they just shut down the government, right? If ICE doesn't get funded, fuck you. We'll just turn off the TSA and you won't be able to fly. Yeah, the Tet Offensive hits the end of January. LBJ's out 2 months later. Bobby Kennedy's running. He's going to win. Like, forget about it. They shoot him right in the back. Those people have never gone away. And now it's Miriam Adelson and Netanyahu and Leon Black, who bit a 7-year-old right in the hoo-ha before he raped her. Like, it's so bad. I don't even want to sit here and just like throw these things out at you and just try to make it worse and worse and worse and worse and worse. Racketeering. It's a racketeering operation. It's Hyman Roth. It's not taxes and abortion and LGBTQ bullshit. It's racketeering. And they don't want you, 50 states, one Israel, right? They don't want you to even know that you can go back to like a country that's in control of itself. It's quite possible that they want us to turn on ourselves. That they don't really need us around. You know that, right? They don't need us around to get the gas and grow the soybeans. They don't need us. And you can see people talk about it on social media. They don't really need us. Is there a religious and ethnic layer to this? Yeah, it's more religious than it is ethnic. So we'll do that on Sunday. I've done a pretty good job on that. Lastly, I made something I hope you have fun with. I think we'll have it up pretty soon. I have a thing called Ask Bruno. And it's an avatar. It's an AI avatar, and you can ask it anything. And it's based on my content. And then going forward, it'll be based on the extant works of Giordano Bruno. So we have a exciting schedule of. So here's what came out. Here's the first song off the first album, just for fun, shall we? You guys know what's the first song off the first Led Zeppelin album? It doesn't sound like anything. That's not it. Sounds like Dwayne Eddy or something. Tomorrow at noon Eastern, we'll do Leaves of Grass. I don't like, all business is too boring. Leaves of Grass. The other thing I'd say too, if you want to work on some of the stuff that I've been talking about for the last couple of years, I'd suggest you find either a partner or build like a little team. Like there's probably somebody that knows the financial markets a little bit better than you. You might have a friend who's like an accountant. Whatever. And you may want to go, because I know it's like sort of weird to like listen to me talk about all like, you talk about shit that nobody else talks about. Yeah, that's sort of the problem, isn't it? Like, great solo, by the way. So, if you want to do things differently, like, it can happen that one day what you do is repulsive and out of favor, and then a week or two goes by and you're the only one that has any idea what the fuck is going on. And that's where we are. The transactions going through the Straits of Hormuz are being settled on blockchain with the ruble from China to Iran, and it's running on Ethereum. Yeah, I told you that 5 years ago. I can also tell you that there is absolutely no investment thesis for the NASDAQ. It's not even like what it's going to go, how far it can go down. There's no investment thesis for the NASDAQ. There's no investment thesis for OpenAI. It's supposedly worth $880 billion. They raised money at the beginning of March, $100 billion, and now they're raising money again 3.5 weeks later. There's nothing there, people. There's nothing there. So ramble on. Leaves are falling all around town. I was on my way. Thanks to you, I'm much obliged. Such a pleasant stay. But now it's time for me to go. The autumn moonlights my way. But now I smell the rain and with it pain, and it's heading my way. I could use some help, a little help. We could use like a couple little teams. It's not even any money required. Just a couple little teams. Little groups of weirdos. I don't know. 3 groups of 3 or something. 9 groups of 9. Just some little smattering. In my phone right now, there's probably a dozen people. One's doing this, one's doing that. Tomorrow, I'll get more serious. We'll, break away from all the other stuff and like talk about what to do. You want to be making new arrangements, people. You want to be making what does that mean? I don't know. $5 diesel fuel is probably the new bottom. $5 diesel fuel is probably the new floor. It's not the thing you worry about. You should be worried about $10 diesel fuel, which will lead to COVID lockdowns. All right, Western elites want this, right? Western elites want 15-minute cities. They want depopulation. They want all this stuff. It wouldn't be an accident, would it, if it all went through that way? All right, I'll see you tomorrow at noon.